Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode in our Korok Seed Master Mode Challenge adventure. This is nearing its conclusion. We've only got 80 seeds left to track down, and 20 of those will be in today's video. So if you're enjoying this series, make sure to leave a like if you find today's video helpful, enjoyable, and or informative, and make sure you check to see if you're subscribed to the channel, as only a fraction of my viewers are actually subscribed, and that would greatly help me out if you would do so. So let's go ahead and jump in to today's 20 seeds. The first seed of today's adventure is going to be a simple magnesis puzzle. This is located in the northwesternmost corner of the map, and the pattern is among some of the easiest ones that we've seen when it comes to these magnesis block puzzles. So fairly easy seed to grab here before moving on to a couple more that are a little more trying. This one is also fairly simple. It involves us moving a rock over to the triangle pattern that is embedded within the snow here. And all things considered, as long as you can locate where this one is, you're not going to have any troubles in getting it. And most of the time, these patterns are outlined on the map as well. So if you zoom in close enough, you'll be able to see exactly where you'll be interacting with these. Seed number 823 is going to be a flower puzzle that we'll need to do. And this is one of a couple that we have in today's video. But this is, I think, probably the second most difficult seed in terms of the pathing that is required to get to it. It has some areas where we can stall out of our ascent in order to get up and kind of recover our stamina without having to consume anything. And as a reminder, anytime you complete one of these Korok seeds, you will instantly have all of your stamina refreshed. So even though we're clinging onto the side of the cliff here, we will be restored completely with our stamina before continuing to seed number 824, which is a lone rock atop one of these Hibber Mountains. So lifting the rock off the top of this little guy will grant us the seed from here, and then we will need to drop the seed back down on top of his head, as is tradition around here, and also to provide this little guy with a little more warmth, as it's pretty chilly up here. Seed number 825 is going to be a Korok Fairy Light pattern, and something I've noticed here in the snowy regions is you can kind of see in the snow where the Koroks run around. Their pattern is relatively marked in the snow. So if you can determine where that path is, you can kind of intercept it, or you can find where it last passed through and just kind of wait there for the Korok to circle back around, whichever suits your playstyle better, or whichever item you tend to find a little bit easier. Seed number 826 is another rock that's hanging out on top of a mountain peak, though a different one from the one that we saw just a few short moments ago. And as we collect this seed and do this little guy the same favor of dropping the rock back down on his head, we can then progress over to the next seed of our adventure, which is going to be another flower trail. This one is the most difficult one of today's video based off of its sheer ascent that we need to do with it. So you'll just need to make sure that you can either find the ledges on this area to stall out and climb up towards, or make sure that you have some stamina replenishment on hand. So right here, you'll see that there are a couple of areas where we can kind of stall out, double back, grab the flower, and continue right on across. It's just a matter of planning your path a little more strategically. And fortunately for us, there is a section up here that is relatively, well, it's actually over to the left and down that we'll paraglide over to. That allows us to recover some more of our stamina a little more easily. We can then resume our climb up towards this flower, and as we finalize this climb, there will be a couple of ledges up towards the top that we can peacefully walk over to complete the path and the white flower that's up here on this cliff edge. So a little more stressful than most, but it does indeed work for us, so no harm, no foul. And we can move right on along to the next seed in our adventure, which will be seed number 828. This one we can paraglide down to and catch ourselves right before making impact with the ground. And if you're ever having difficulties finding the rocks to complete these patterns, you can activate your stasis, and that will highlight the rock that is needed to complete the puzzle and gain the Korok seed. This particular path does involve carrying this stone downhill, and as a general rule from my experience, you're pretty safe in determining where the location of the missing rock is and following basically a straight line away from there in order to find the rock that will complete the pattern, and that was no exception for this seed here. Moving right along to seed number 829 of our adventure, we find ourselves with a rock that is hiding behind a bombable wall. We haven't seen this one recently, so it is a little bit refreshing to see that here again. After blasting down the wall, we can lift up the rock, and similar to having your stamina recharged, any of your runes that have been exhausted, really just the bomb runes and the stasis rune, those will retain their freshness after collecting the seeds as well. We can move along to another rock that's hanging out on top of a peak. This one's fairly low in comparison with some of the other ones that we've seen, but is still one that we'll need to track down nevertheless and do this guy the same due process of dropping the rock on his head before continuing on to a time trial puzzle. And this is one of the longest distances that we've had to go for a Korok Seed time trial. And if you do have a higher amount of stamina, you'll be able to make it over to this on one single flight. However, due to the nature of the challenge that we are involved in, we don't have any additional stamina except for the one stamina wheel that was given off the orbs from the Great Plateau. So we'll just need to glide our way down to the location of this seed and shortly here in just a moment drop down before switching over to shield surfing to assure that we can get to the end of this objective in the time that's remaining on that timer. And it also helped us avoid that snow Lizalfo, so can't complain about that either. After collecting this seed, that officially has us at the midway point of today's segment, so we will continue on to seed number 832, and this seed is, you can notice the balloons bunch up a little bit towards the center, so if you play things smart, you can actually take all of the balloons out with a single shot, provided that you don't put your bomb arrow right through the center of those balloons like I did. But because of the blast radius here, with a minor correction, we can loose the next arrow and get all 3 balloons in only 2 shots. So we are still well ahead in what was required to claim the seed from here. We can now transition over to seed number 833, which is going to be a small little pattern puzzle that we will need to move 3 rocks into. But first, we'll drop our Great Flame Blade on top of this Lizalfo, pick up his bits, and then seek out the rocks that are needed for this puzzle. As I mentioned earlier, you will notice that all of these rocks are basically in a straight line away from the places that are missing within the patterns, so you'll just need to move those over. The one minor exception to this is the seed that's up atop here. You can grab, and I almost had it slide right into its needed position just with that toss. It would be interesting to see if that is something that indeed can be accomplished, but I wasn't about to spend too much time on doing that in today's video. Maybe we'll revisit it at some point in the future. We can now have a look at seed number 834, which is another lone rock hanging out on a rock formation. So we can grab the seed from here and give this little guy his cover / a concussion before continuing on our way to the next seed in our traversal, which is actually going to be the last seed in the Hibber Mountain region, and it is another flower path that we'll need to take on. Now this flower path, it instead of being an ascending flower path is a descending one, which actually makes it the easiest flower path that we have seen, especially where the last downward facing flower path that we were involved in was in the middle of the pouring rain, and that's just not fun for anyone involved. A short little glide from this little outcropping down to the final flower in this pattern will grant us the objective we need and allow us to move out of the Hibber Mountain region to some different areas. This seed is backtracking a little bit closer to Zora's domain, As I discovered, you can knock leaves off of rocks in their dried state without the use of flame. And of course, given that everything is wet here, you cannot burn it. But by using a metal weapon, you can clear the leaves off of that rock. So that's what we did to claim the seed from there. Over here, you can see that the seed here on this shrine island, it recommends that you use this raft in order to sail over to this small little rock in the ocean. But because I didn't want to go track down a Korok leaf, we opted for making a kind of Cryonis bridge and swimming over to the rock, which got us there in a shorter amount of time than the overall time that was on the timer for getting that seed. So I'm going to write this one off as being a complete win. We can now go to the last seed that we're backtracking for, and this one is the one that kind of breaks one of the challenge parameters that I'd set. I wanted to get through this without completing any of the main story quest objectives, but the Zora armor is required to get this time trial, as it is the only way for us to swim up or get up to the top of this waterfall in time to complete the time trial. There might be one other item that we could have used to get it, but we will have to revisit that in a different time and under the constraints of a different challenge. The second to last seed of today's video is going to be this little bombable Korok here in the tree trunk. We'll need to blast him out and move on to the final seed, which is going to be a set of statues that are looking for another apple. And after finishing our shield surfing down this path, we will come right up to the spot that we need, and we can drop the apple into its place and claim the seed from here. With only 60 seeds left to go, most of which being in some of the more challenging parts of the map, I highly encourage you to check out the next and final couple of episodes in this series, as we will certainly have some very tough puzzles to sort through. But until then, thanks again for watching, and I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day.